Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Most incels believe that having sex with an attractive woman will be the thing that defines their manhood and will be the way they can graduate into becoming a man. Now, I have a critical question for incels out there regarding this belief. If a mentally incompetent, retarded man has sex with an attractive woman, does that make him a man? Does that allow him to graduate into manhood? Moreover, if this mentally incompetent, retarded man who has a lower IQ than an incel has sex with an attractive woman, does that make him more of a man than the incel who has not had sex with a woman but is smarter than he is? Does that also make that mentally retarded man who is mentally incompetent under the standard of law and doesn't have any mental capacities more of a man than an incel who has all of his mental capacities and is mentally competent? Would that make that mentally retarded man who is mentally incompetent under the law a Chad? Would that make that mentally incompetent, retarded man a Tyrone? And would that having sex with an attractive woman make that mentally retarded, mentally incompetent man under the standard of law an alpha male? When one thinks critically about the scenarios I have proposed, they see how completely ridiculous it is for a boy or a man to define himself by the validation and approval of women and to define their manhood by having sex with women. Now, most incels over the last 50 years have been miseducated by imbibing 50 years of feminist and gynocentric media created by Madison Avenue advertisers, Hollywood movie studios, and the porn industry that tell him that his manhood is defined by getting the attention of women, getting the approval of women, and the opportunity to have sex with women. And that if he has sex with that woman at a young age, he will graduate into manhood if those women approve of him and see him as worthy of having sex with. Now, this is a lie that has been passed down from one generation to the next over the last 50 years, and it's evolved into a belief system that has become the gospel truth for too many men here in America and the West. And when it comes down to this belief system, it's something that most men should start changing their whole perspective on. Because the truth is, having sex is not the thing that defines whether a boy graduates into manhood. What puts a boy on the road to manhood is the fact that God made him male. That is the only thing that is the definition of what puts a boy onto manhood. And under the standard of the living God, he says in his word that according to his commandment, which was given by Jesus, we are supposed to love the Lord with all our heart, all our soul, and all our spirit. And in the 10 commandments from the Old Testament, he said in the first commandment, we are to have no other gods before him. So when an incel defines his manhood by his relationships and sexual encounters with a woman, what he's doing is making women into gods. And he's putting that woman before the very God he created him, a violation of the law of the living God and the commandment of Jesus Christ. Now, in the Corinthians, it states it is not good for a man to touch a woman. And what Paul meant was it's not good for a man to have sex with a woman outside of marriage. And Paul also states if a man doesn't have a wife, he shouldn't go out seeking a wife. And that means if a man doesn't have a woman, he shouldn't be going out here to go look for a woman. So Your Apostle Paul clearly states in the Corinthians the standards for what a man should follow. And sadly, because many incels don't really know about a relationship with God due to America's pseudo-Christian religion, they don't understand the principles that a man is supposed to follow under the standard of the living God. Now, it also states in the Corinthians that an unmarried man cares more about the things related to God and is focused on pleasing God. So when it comes down to the unmarried man who isn't having sex, he's actually in a better place than the guy out here who has a girlfriend or is married, because he is more focused and centered on God, and he's more focused and centered on having a relationship with God. And that means he is focused on becoming a steward of God and doing the work of God on this earth. And under the standard of God, this is what defines a man: the work that he does for God on this earth and what he accomplishes in his life. That's what God says is a man, and that is the standard I believe most incels need to start focusing on. Now, I myself have been following this standard for over 25 years, and I know where a lot of these incels are coming from, and I know about the pressures many of these incels are dealing with at a young age. Because when I was in junior high school, I used to have a lot of guys coming at me getting mad because I didn't have a girlfriend and I wasn't out here having sex with lots of women. So they would try to bully and shame me and try to tell me that this meant that I was less of a man and that there was something wrong with me. And if it wasn't for God himself showing me the standard of a man and showing me how to be a man under the God standard, I would have grown up believing that false standard to be true. Because a lot of men out here, again, they buy into the whole Madison Avenue and Hollywood and porn industry standard that says a man's manhood is defined by the sex he has with women, but that is a completely gynocentric standard created so that you can have men out here chasing the attention and approval of women and not going out here and being the competitors to the business establishments out here. Because when it comes down to the wealthy elite out here, what they want boys and men to do is follow behind these women and have them taking their resources and giving it to the women, because they know that women are primarily consumers and that men who are focused on consumption are not focused on production. Because a man who takes his resources and invests it in himself and invests it in his own businesses, this is a man who will wind up competing with many of these corporate businesses, and they don't want that. What they want men to do is buy into these belief systems where they'll sit there and talk about how they need to please and appease these women, buying them everything they want, and then sucking away all of their life essence. And what happens to most of those men is they never go out here and actualize their potential as a man. Whereas the man who follows the standard that the Apostle Paul talked about in the Corinthians, this is a man who is going to go out here, and he's going to go out here and do God's work. He's going to accomplish what God wants him to accomplish in his life, and he's going to be a man who meets the standard of a man as related to the living God, and that man is going to grow in ways that most of these men out here aren't going to grow at all. He's going to have spiritual growth. He's going to have a closer relationship with God, because God is going to be his primary focus, and he's going to be focused on doing whatever work God needs to be done. So I followed that standard for over 25 years, and it has allowed me to grow, and it has allowed me to become a better man, as I see it, than I would if I were to stay out into the world. Because as I started to realize, the man who has sex with a woman, he does not graduate into manhood. He graduates into gynocentrism, and he becomes a slave to gynocentric culture. And he doesn't become the alpha in that gynocentric culture. No, he becomes the beta in that gynocentric culture. He becomes a slave to women, and those women dictate to him, and he follows them on their terms. Whereas men who follow the standard of the living God, those men start to move forward. And usually, because those men are leaders, women wind up following them, and they wind up becoming helpmeets and supports to them. But their main focus is never appeasing and pleasing the woman. Their standard is pleasing the living God and doing the work of the living God. And this is why incels shouldn't ever define their manhood on whether or not they have sex with women. The foundations of a man's manhood and masculinity were never created by women, so they shouldn't define it by anything related to women. The standard for manhood was created by God, and when you go out here and find out what type of man God wants you to be, then you can actually realize your potential and be the best man you can possibly be. If you want to learn more about the issues that are leading to many men becoming incels these days, you can learn about them by picking up my new book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box or the PayPal link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.